It's October 95, Yankees at Mariners, Game 5. This is Remember That Game, the podcast about sporting events that take you on a journey and maybe chart the path of the zeitgeist. I'm your host, Thomas Emerick, and my guest is Representative Adam Smith of Washington's 9th Congressional District in Seattle and South King County. As this Mariners team came up, you were the country's youngest state senator out of the Seattle area there, as the Mariners reached the American League Divisional Series in 95. Were you getting any deja vu while watching the ALDS in 2025?
Absolutely. In fact, it's funny. So my best friend growing up and I were at the 1995 Game 5. 30 years later, I got 2 tickets at the last second, so I invited him because I figured it would be good karma to 30 years later be at that Game 5. So it was a very similar experience.
Yeah, and Mariners, founded in 77, had never made the playoffs heading into the spring of 95, and they needed a new stadium in the near future as the Kingdome had already started falling apart. In 94, a piece of the ceiling nearly fell on Cal Ripken Jr. during the Iron Man streak. Funding for a new venue was a huge question mark. How worried were you about the Mariners remaining in Seattle?
Very. And that's the interesting thing. So I've been a baseball fan since, 4 or 5 years old. I played Little League and all that. And the Mariners came to Seattle in 1977. So I was 11 years old. It was really exciting and all of that. But a lot of people don't fully appreciate how terrible a franchise they were for 18 years. I mean, they weren't, it's like they weren't even really part of Major League Baseball. In 18 years, they never were in competition for a playoff spot. I mean, basically the season was over by May or June at best. In 18 years, they posted 2 winning records. And it was like, I think they won 82 games one year, 83 the next. So it wasn't, something like they were actually in contention for a playoff spot. So when 95 happened, it was a brand new experience for all Mariners fans. And yes, the Kingdome was, as you pointed out, literally falling apart. And this was back in the era when, clubs pretty much demanded that local communities pay for at least part of the stadium. So we were in the midst of a campaign to try to raise, to pass a bond initiative in King County to fund the stadium at the same time that the Mariners went on this run. And remember, they were 13 games out of first place on August 1st. So they went on an incredible run, and the entire town, this was an obsession. Everyone was focused on. I remember I had a fundraising event one night when they had a game that was really close to the 9th inning, and everyone was in their car in the parking lot waiting until the game ended on their radio to come into the event. It really, really captured the entire city.
Yeah, and that build up to that season and your experience going to the games. What was it like catching one south of downtown there?
Yeah, no, it was funny because so I throughout the late 70s and 80s, I went to a lot of Mariners games in the Kingdome. And I always described it. We were rattling around in a 64,000 seat stadium, typically with like 7,000 or 8,000 people in it. Okay, it was just a bizarre experience, and there was a baseball game going on down there. So yeah, it was very, very hard to generate that interest. And also, Seattle kind of has a mixed record as a sports town. I mean, when our teams do well and we bond with them, you really get a lot of enthusiasm for the Sonics in the late 70s when they won the first championship, the Seahawks once they started going on some of their runs. But outside of that, we got a lot of other things to do in Seattle. So if it's not interesting, people are like, yeah, I'm going to go hiking. So getting that focus, and the Mariners had never been that focused until 95. Now, having Ken Griffey Jr. on the team since 89, 90 helped. We started having some talent, but that had not yet translated into wins as we entered the 95 season.
Yeah, good mix of young players and veterans, and you had recently gotten Alex Rodriguez with the first overall pick. He'll be coming off the bench, but a lot of key at-bats and pinch runs this season. but the season starts a month late due to the strike that had canceled the 94 postseason. So as that carried through winter, are you wondering if the team won't get the chance to rally political support from the baseball diamond in 95?
Absolutely. And there was a real feeling entering the 94 season, because the 94 season was the first season that they split into divisions within the league. So previously, that was a part of the problem also. And I forget how many teams there were in the American League in 1993, but it was, I don't know, 10 or so. So, I mean, you had to win that division to make the playoffs. I mean, it wasn't like basketball or hockey where everybody makes the playoffs. So when they split it, and we were in, at the time, a 4-team division with Texas, Oakland, and the Angels. And there was a real feeling. And Griffey was, really turning into a superstar at this point. Edgar Martinez was good. Heading into 94, we felt like, hey, we got a shot. And then that division, and people don't remember, that division was horrific when the strike hit. I think we were like 2 games out, but we were 10 games under 500. I mean, it was terrible, but there was a feeling like it was possible, but the team just hadn't played that well. So heading into 95, like you said, month late, the strike, there wasn't a ton of optimism heading into the season, even with the talent the Mariners obviously had.
Yeah, and then Griffey fractures his wrist on an incredible catch at the wall in May, misses half the season. Mariners fall 13 back in August, trailing the division-leading California Angels, as they're called, then in the AL West. How did your expectations this season morph as early spring? The expectations aren't that high, but it goes to late summer, and now you're down 13.
Same old, same old. It's like, okay, it's May, it's June, let's go focus on something else. It's like, and then Lou Piniella was the manager, and Piniella, I think, started early in August saying, no, we're going to turn this around. Very positive attitude about it. Eventually it morphed into the refuse to lose thing as we slowly started to creep forward. Now, the other thing is the Angels just completely collapsed. I mean, you don't make up a 13-game deficit just by playing well. The Angels also collapsed. And as we headed towards the end of the season, we were actually, by the final weekend of the season, the Mariners only needed one more win down in Texas to clinch it. But we lost, the last 2 games of the series in Texas, which forced the 1-game playoff, which at the time was an epic game. I think it was Mark Langston for the Angels, I forget who, and Johnson for us. And, back and forth, we were up 1-0 until there was a bases clearing. Well, it's actually a weak ground ball down the first baseline. I think it was Salmon who was playing first base. He misplayed it. All 3 runs scored, and then they threw it away, and the other guy scored. And so we won that, and everyone was excited. But now Randy Johnson was used up. And now the next day, we got to fly to New York and start the 5-game series with the Yankees. And Johnson wasn't going to be able to pitch until game 3.
They have that first AL playoff since the Bucky Dent in 78. And you get a ticket to the dance. Was the regional excitement on the level at this point?
Yeah,
maybe even exceeding the Windows 95 launch party.
No, it was, yeah. At least for some of us anyway. I think the Microsoft people who went on to make millions and millions of dollars were maybe a little more excited, but we were very excited. Yeah, and I think there was optimism too, because the team was really good. We played great. Griffey was back, and it's the Yankees. But the Yankees in 1995, it had been a while since they'd been a thing. In fact, I don't think they had made the playoffs since like 81 at that point. This was when George Costanza could famously yell at George Steinbrenner about destroying the franchise. So I think there was a lot of optimism that we had a team that could go far.
And the heart of the Mariners lineup back together for the playoff run. Griffey, Jay Buhner, Tino Martinez, and Edgar Martinez couldn't have gotten there without him. The AL batting champ in 95 helped them tread water during the rough parts of the season. And you have Randy Johnson, the stopper in that tiebreaker game, snaps a losing streak for the Mariners for the 13th time that season to send them to that Yankees series. He won't be able to pitch the first 2 games, though, because not even a travel day on either side of that tiebreaker game. But had the big unit already cemented himself as a Seattle legend even before this story goes to the Yankee part of this.
No, not really. I mean, he was a good dominant pitcher. I forget how we hadn't had him for that many years at that point. And of course, the strike had interrupted the 94 season. So, I mean, he had a dominant season in 95, but no, he had not cemented himself as a legend. And then in New York, I don't remember I remember one of the games was an extra inning thing. Griffey hit a couple home runs, but we wound up losing. Gosh, it was pouring. It's all coming back to me. I was pouring rain. I forget there was some Yankee catcher who hit a home run to beat us in like the 13th inning or some damn thing. So on top of not having any rest, we had to go play a massive extra inning game, and so we come back to Seattle down 0-2.
Yeah, I believe it was the Leyritz homer.
Leyritz,
and
that's his name. Yes,
another hit for the Yankees there, and the game 1 in Yankee Stadium. As you mentioned, Griffey sends 2 out the park versus David Cone. And also brings that Gold Glove to center field on defense. Great play, even though they lose that one, and then extra innings, 15 innings, of course, naturally in game 2. What's more exhilarating, though, Griffey golfing one out or climbing the fence?
Personally, I think climbing the fence. I mean, you see a lot of great catches. I don't know. I just like the defense, the skill, his ability to get to a ball and make the play. That was always really, really exciting.
Is there anything else on that level for you in terms of iconic 90s baseball?
Well, I mean, 90s was about the home run, so yes. Now, I mean, it was the steroid era, as it later became known. So yeah, in the 90s, the iconic thing was home runs. I mean, and it's funny, you think of McGuire and Sosa. I always remember a guy named Brady Anderson, who was, I don't know, I think he was an outfielder for the Baltimore Orioles, who was about my size. Okay, like 5'11", $180, whatever. Hit 51 home runs for Baltimore. In no other season, I think, had he ever hit 20 or he didn't hit 20 cents. And who the hell knows? I'm not going to impugn Brady Anderson on the podcast. I don't know what the hell is going on. But really, the iconic 90s baseball thing was the home run. No doubt about it.
It was suddenly hitting 50. And Griffey would hit 5 in this series, tying Reggie Jackson's record with the Yankees back in the 70s. Griffey's dad would eventually play in pinstripes, but Griffey said he would never play for the Yankees because the way his dad was treated, he felt he was treated there. So he has this fuel from childhood and performed statistically better against the Yankees than any other team. Not enough in games 1 and 2, though. But you got Randy Johnson back in game 3. What was the mood like there in Seattle? Backs against the wall, returning home, needing to win 3 straight in the Kingdome.
I think there was still a feeling that it could happen. I mean, it had been that type of season. I mean, and throughout that run, by the way, in August and September, there were a whole bunch of games that were like nail biters one way or the other, and we always managed to pull them out. I remember I went to a game where Tino Martinez hit a bottom of the 9th game-winning home run to walk it off for us. So there was a feeling it could happen, and with Randy pitching in game 3. But I think the one that people were really nervous about was game 4. And we came out, I'm going to get the numbers slightly wrong, but I think we were down 6-0 early on in game 4. And then Edgar hit a 3-run homer to make it 6-3, which sort of, all right, we're in it. It's possible. And then one of those moments that I remember, so Edgar came up, I want to say it was the bottom of the 8th, and we had tied it at 6. And he hits this line, what looked to me off the bat like a line drive to center field with the bases loaded. And my first going, get down. And then I'm like, shit, it's going to stay up. All right, sacrifice fly, no problem. And I'm like, damn, it goes out of the park for a grand slam. I mean, he just, whatever muscle he put into that, it just kept going and going and going. And so we won game 4, 10-6, which then, of course, sets us up for game 5 and David Cone and, of all people, Andy Bennis on our side.
Yeah, Grandma get the rye bread and mustard. It's a grand salami for Edgar Martinez, a man who just a few years earlier, I think in his mid-20s, is working days at a furniture store, nights at a factory, and goes and tries out for the Mariners. Here he is making huge hits. Yeah, you mentioned Tino Martinez as well. Has a 2-run shot in game 3 to put them ahead. And with Randy Johnson and and actually a key Dan Wilson hit. They go ahead later in the series, make it 2-2 after game 4, and in game 5 it's do or die. Again, 12th game in 13 days because they jammed a bunch of games at the end of the season to make up for lost time with the strike. And there's no travel day on either side of the tiebreaker versus California. So, or even the fans are running on fumes 12 and 13 days.
Yeah, I think at that point we still had enough excitement. Although the running on fumes things makes me think of the game 5 that we had this year. The 13 inning thing going, or 15 innings, sorry, going up against Skewball. And I was like, every pitch on that game I could decide it from the first inning on. All right. And then, we wind up with a 2-2 tie. And so again, every pitch is like, this could be it. This could be it. And I got to tell you, by the bottom of the 13th, I was sort of emotionally spent. And we got a couple guys on a couple times. It's like, yeah, but for game 5, I think that the fans were at sort of peak enthusiasm. They were not spent. They were like, this is it. Game 5, Yankees. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, and we'll go extras again like in 2025. Here in 95, tight throughout. Andy Bennett starts 9 up, 9 down, and Joey Cora and Jay Buhner both provide early leads, but 2-run hits from Paul O'Neill in the 4th and Don Mattingly in the 6th each pulled New York back out ahead. Which Yankees struck the most fear in you from that 95 squad?
O'Neill. He was really, really hot that year. And of course he hit the 2-run homer to put him up 2-1 on us. He was the guy we least wanted to see. I mean, Don Mattingly was still there. He was more towards the end of his career at that point. Still a really good hitter. But Paul O'Neill was the one that we worried about the most.
Yeah, the Mattingly, a legend of that non-playoff period. But yeah, one guy can't take you all the way there. He does make a big hit, or he does give the Yankees the lead. And so Mariners are down 4-2 in the 8th, but David Cone going past 140 pitches, no Wetland, no Mariano Rivera yet. In the moment, were you glad to see them hold off on bringing in the relievers?
Yeah, it's weird. In fact, I looked at that. So this was an 11-inning game, and both teams only used 3 pitchers. And as I looked back on the 95 game, one thing that really struck me is how much baseball has changed. I mean, you had, like you said, you had Cone throwing this unbelievable number of pitches. Andy Bennett, even after we had given up 4 runs, they kept him in, for 6 2/3. And in the whole game, each side only used 3 pitchers. Now they're using 6, 7. It's just so much more of a specialized game in that way. So I don't know that I thought about it, whether or not keeping Cone in or not. And also the other thing to remember is Mariano Rivera was not yet a thing. We were kind of aware of him, but John Wetland was their closer. It was Wetland who gave up the grand slam to Edgar the day before. So we didn't know yet how good Mariano Rivera turned out to be. And then in this game, by the time they brought him in, he only threw 2/3 of an inning. And later in his career, gosh, he went I think 5 innings one time in an extra inning game for them. So mostly as we headed to the bottom of the 8th, and Griffey gets the home run, I think he was a leadoff. But then Cone is obviously struggling. So, and I think he walked a guy to load the bases. And then Doug Strange comes up. And in my mind, I'm thinking he could walk. And if he walks, we're tied and we have life. All right. And the very first pitch to Doug Strange, it's one of those things that I remember even before I look back on this game, is a slider in the dirt. All right. And he swings at it. And you could have just put a knife through my heart at that point. I'm like, you could walk and you swing at a pitch. It's that far out of the zone. But he managed to walk anyway. they threw him at the 3-2 pitch was again the slider or curveball or whatever that wound up in the dirt. Didn't swing at it. He walks. We have life. It's 4-4. We still have the bases loaded. We didn't do anything with it. So we go to the 9th with a 4-4 game.
Yeah, it doesn't chase it into the dirt for that 3-2 pitch, and Doug Strange that walk ties it. A-Rod scores, having come in as a pinch hitter, and between the Griffey homer earlier in the inning and that walk with the bases loaded, all right, we're going to the 9th inning tied. but you'll have 2 on and no outs, and Lou Piniella sends Randy Johnson out to retire 3. What's it like as a fan of a team with Randy Johnson, just the endorphins as he walks out of the bullpen there?
I'll tell you, there's probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 iconic moments in Mariners history, and the biggest one is coming up at the end of this. But one of the top 5 is that moment. Because remember, the bullpens in those days were not off hidden in the outfield somewhere. I mean, in some big sophisticated thing. The bullpen was basically, a mound and a plate just off the field and down the left field line. And they brought Randy Johnson in, and they brought him in to Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses. And, just that song with him walking out there in that situation is just one of the definitive moments of being a Mariners fan. Hell, I think it's one of the definitive moments in baseball. And keep in mind, he had pitched just 2 days before. I mean, I forget how long he went in that game, but it wasn't like he had 2 days in between or whatever. He had a day in between when he came back out in the 9th inning. But the Welcome to the Jungle song was perfectly appropriate.
Yeah, and you had participated in the Congressional baseball game for many years. By one source, I saw your top 5 all time in RBI. Not as many as Cedric Richmond and Jimmy Pineda, but still way up there. Did it get a little tense during those close games?
I tell you that's one of my more stressful experiences, because I play that baseball game. We're old basically, and there's always the possibility of massive embarrassment out there. Stupid base running decision, bad error, falling on your face, coming around a base or something. So yeah, it is a little tense and stressful, and on and off. I played in the game for 26, 27 years. So, but it's a lot of fun too. I mean, and it's one of the ways, the Republicans I know, a lot of Republicans that I know and have relationships with, are because we played in the baseball game against each other. But the iconic moment for me was Steve Largent, obviously legend in Seattle sports and in another sport, congressman from Oklahoma. He used to pitch for the Republican team, and I hit 2 triples off of him in my first congressional baseball game. So, that's probably my greatest sporting accomplishment of my life.
Yeah, and I should caveat that the source I had starts in 2009, so a bunch of RBI is not accounted for from Representative Adam Smith, and at least in that spreadsheet. Well, what are your prospects of coming out of retirement ever for that contest?
It's hard. I went through a huge physical and mental health struggle from like 2015 to 2014 to 2019. I have 2 artificial hips now. I had chronic pain, chronic anxiety, where I could barely get out of bed. But I made it back from that, and I played in 2 games. Of course, the pandemic wiped out 1, but I played in, I think it was 21 and 22. Got a couple hits 1 game, and I really felt like, okay, I made it back, which I never expected to do. But in general, doctors tell you that you shouldn't be doing things like playing in a hardball baseball game with 2 artificial hips. So I think it's unlikely at this point. I may have to rest on the career that I have put together.
Yeah, but that's a comeback story right there. Resilience, much like Edgar Martinez going and trying out for the Mariners, and ends up at the plate in the 11th inning. They're actually down 1 at that point.
Well, that's the thing. So Johnson came in the 9th. He got out of the 9th. He got out of the 10th. He gave up a run in the 11th. It was basically a seeing eye ground ball between short and third. So hard to really blame him too much for it. But here we go, bottom 11th. We're down a run, and they've got Jack McDowell. Their third pitcher he was a starter as well, and I don't remember which game he had started one of the games.
3 versus Johnson.
Yeah. So Joey Cora does a drag bunt. Yankees had complained about the fact that he ran out of the baseline to avoid the tag. Didn't really look like he went that far out of the baseline. He's safe. Then Griffey bangs a single up the middle. Cora goes from first to third. So we got first and third, nobody out. Edgar at the plate, still down 1.
And the Cora avoiding that tag, some incredible agility there. It seemed like he still stayed in the baseline, and but the third baseline, Griffey believes it's a little softer at the Kingdome. Like he knows the turf, And he said if Edgar hit it that way, he thinks the ball is going to die when it bounces and give him the chance to get from first to home. And so Edgar Martinez, the late great Dave Niehaus on the call. I won't be able to do him justice. I won't say it like he did it, but people should go check out that call. He says, and the 0-1 pitch on the way to Edgar Martinez swung and lined down to left field base hit. Here comes Joy. Here's Junior to third base. They're going to wave him in. The throw to home plate will be late. The Mariners are going to play for the American League Championship. I don't believe it. It just continues. My, oh my. And that's my toned down version of the great Dave Niehaus. People check that out. What's your reaction to that moment, and where are you watching?
I mean, to this day, you just say that sends chills down. So I'm watching this, and I'm an obsessive baseball fan. I'm analyzing it. I'm looking at the pitch, everything. I'm saying, hey, you got it. You throw him a high fastball. No, throw the curveball outside. I'm looking at every play. So when Edgar hit that, and I saw it land, I was like, okay, we're tied. We got second and third with nobody out. All right. That's good. That's fine. We're in good shape to win this game. And as all this is going through my mind, and I was sitting sort of right behind first base, probably, 20 rows up. So, I see Edgar go off, run around, all that. And I remember the moment vividly in my head as I looked where the ball was in the outfield, the guy picking it up, and Griffey as he headed towards third. When it entered my head, he's going to score. Okay. And we're going to win. And it was just an incredibly exciting moment. He came around, and they've got, in that moment of Griffey sliding in fact, it's the only bobblehead I've ever seen that isn't of a guy just standing there. There's actually a Mariners bobblehead of Griffey as he crosses home plate in the slide, from there to just memorialize that moment. And then they've got the pictures of all that you can see. I can also see into the Mariners dugout. Mariners dugout was on the third base side. And everyone's just jumping up, going crazy as he comes in and scores, and then they mob the field. And it was a very exciting moment in sports.
6-5 in 11 innings. The deciding Game 5 goes to the Mariners, and they'll advance to the ALCS. And just getting to see that in person, where does that rank in your favorite sports memories?
Is one of the top three. I'm a big University of Washington football fan too. And a few years before that, same friend of mine and I drove to Nebraska for when UW in our national championship year went to Lincoln and beat Nebraska 36-21 in a hell of a football game. And then just 2 years ago, not quite 2 years ago, my daughter, who is a University of Washington graduate now, and I went to the Sugar Bowl against Texas. Which we won. We tried very hard to blow that game. But in the end, we got the fourth down stop that we needed to get, and we all let out a giant sigh of relief. So those three are probably the coolest sporting events I've been to. And now I guess I got to add, Game 5 against Detroit just last week, which was quite the 15-inning experience as well.
Yeah, and you came out of UW, and shortly after the youngest state senator in the country out of the Seattle area, and then by 96, U.S. Congress out of the Seattle area. At the time, there was an emergent sports, business, and cultural scene. What was it like in Seattle and King County back then?
I think it was really cool because how Seattle evolved. We were primarily, fishing and logging community and Boeing. That was, when I was growing up, 60s, 70s, 80s, was Boeing in that. And then the 80s is when we exploded into something new. Microsoft, obviously drove a lot of that. But the aerospace stuff spread out. A lot of Boeing engineers went off and founded companies. And Seattle was a really cool place at that point. Costco, another iconic brand. Starbucks was growing and emerging. I think in the 90s, when I was coming up in politics in that area, there was a real sense of sort of limitless possibilities for the region. And yeah, I started running for the state Senate when I was in law school. I wasn't a particularly good law student. I had to find something else to do. So I got involved in politics, and yeah, it was an exciting place to be. You could sense all of the possibilities for the future coming out of all the cool things that were happening.
Yeah, and you introduced a new education package in Congress a few weeks ago. Back in the 90s, did it seem like it was easier to map high school to career paths and success? And what's been lacking that this package aims to address?
Yeah, well, we haven't changed with the times. Yes, when I graduated from high school in 1983, and that was a time when, because of the advantage that the U.S. had after World War II. I mean, the entire industrialized world had just been blown off the face of the map, except for us. So we had this long advantage when, basically a high school education was good enough to get a job. If you wanted to get a college degree, you could get a college degree in just about anything you wanted to. And then Boeing or IBM or GM or some big company would hire you. The competition that entered the world starting in the 80s and into the 90s kind of changed that. When I went to high school, it was all, try to go to college. There wasn't as much of a focus on vocational training. And also college was affordable. It's not affordable anymore. So what we need now is we need to start in high school preparing young people to have the skills they need to be employable. And we need to make access to vocational, career and technical education every little bit as accessible as a college degree, because there are so many jobs that require those specialized skills that you're not going to get in college that you can get for a lot cheaper. So I'm very focused on workforce development and giving our young people those options, because it's just a lot more competitive and a lot more difficult and a lot more expensive than it used to be. So we have to give more options and better access to training. So that's what my package of legislation is aimed at doing.
Did it feel like any pressure was lifted off the city after this Yankees series, win the ALDS? Did it feel different looking forward to the AL Championship Series against Cleveland?
Yeah, no, I mean, two things about that. One, it really did generate a spirit in the region that people were nicer to each other. They were in a better mood. Same thing happened in 2001 when we went on that 116 game streak. I mean, people who never had any interest in baseball whatsoever were part of it. It really sort of brought the community together. I'll tell you the truth, as we were headed towards Cleveland, I was really worried that we were just out of gas for the reasons you state. I mean, all those games in a row, stretching the pitching staff, and also Cleveland was stacked that year. But we go to game one, and we got to pull this 21-year-old rookie, Walcott. I forget his first name. He had to start the first game because we were out of pitchers. And I remember he walked the bases loaded with nobody out in the first inning. Somehow got out of it, including Joey Cora making an incredible diving stop on a line drive, and we won the first game. But then Cleveland pretty much overwhelmed us the rest of the series, so wound up losing 4-2.
Yeah, that Cleveland team 144 record, that extrapolated out, that's like one of the best top three number of the modern era. I think it goes out to 112 wins extrapolated to a full season. Mike Hargrove, ridiculous lineup, Carlos Baerga, Manny Ramirez, Albert Bell, Kenny Lofton, All-Star Hall of Famer Eddie Murray, young Jim Thome, and Sandy Alomar. Then legendary glove at shortstop Omar Vizquel, All-Star ace Dennis Martinez, who Griffey goes and hugs after Martinez closes out the series in Game 6. Two greats. That rotation with Nagy, Hershiser, Mesa closing. Were you proud at the time of not only putting that first ALDS series on the board, but also in the ALCS, Mariners taking two from an absolute house of a 1995 Cleveland squad?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not one of those fans who expects my team to win the championship every year. I'm not Philadelphia, but it was so fun because just to be able to compete, to be able to get to September and go to a baseball game and have something on the line. You don't understand that for 18 years in Seattle, that was a feeling that we did not know. It's just completely unfamiliar with. So we put together a team, and basically from 95 to 2003, we were competitive. Now, by the time we got to 2003 and that competitive thing didn't turn into a trip to the World Series, that started to get a little frustrating. But, for 9 seasons, we were a competitive baseball team. And September came and it mattered. And Lou Piniella and Ken Griffey Jr. and a whole bunch of people, Ichiro eventually, made it possible to really, really have fun as a baseball fan in Seattle for a stretch. And those are good memories.